Modern medicine is supposed to represent the pinnacle of human achievement, centuries of scientific progress, billions invested in research, the most sophisticated technology ever developed applied to understanding and treating human disease. Yet we can't cure cancer, we can't cure Alzheimer's, we can't cure Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis or lupus or countless other conditions that afflict millions. We manage symptoms, we slow progression, we make patients comfortable while diseases run their course. We're told this is simply the nature of medicine. These diseases are complex. The human body is complicated. Progress takes time. Breakthroughs will come eventually. But what if the breakthroughs already came? What if cures existed, were used, were effective, and then were deliberately suppressed? What if the medical struggles we accept as inevitable are actually the consequence of lost knowledge, knowledge that was erased along with the civilization that developed it? I started investigating Tartarian medicine after noticing something strange in historical records. Descriptions of treatments that shouldn't have worked but apparently did, references to healing techniques that don't match any known medical tradition, accounts of recoveries that modern medicine would consider impossible. The deeper I went, the more the pattern emerged. A sophisticated medical system existed before the reset. A system based on principles we've forgotten or been taught to dismiss. A system that could treat conditions we still consider incurable. The evidence is scattered but consistent. In the architecture of buildings we've misidentified as purely ceremonial. In the design of spaces we've labeled as decorative. In the fragments of knowledge that survived suppression and persist today in traditions dismissed as primitive or fraudulent. The Tartarians didn't just build magnificent structures and advanced technology. They understood human health in ways we've lost, and recovering that understanding might transform medicine as completely as recovering their energy technology would transform society. Let me begin with the hospitals, not modern hospitals. The grand healing institutions of the 19th century that we've been taught were built by emerging industrial societies learning to care for their populations. These buildings don't look like hospitals. They look like palaces, soaring ceilings, elaborate ornamentation, massive windows flooding interiors with light, sophisticated ventilation systems, acoustic properties that create profound stillness, architecture that seems designed for purposes far beyond warehousing sick bodies. The official explanation attributes this grandeur to Victorian values, the belief that beautiful surroundings aided recovery, the philanthropic impulse of wealthy benefactors, civic pride expressing itself through monumental public buildings. But examine these hospitals more carefully. Look at their engineering, not just their aesthetics. Notice features that don't fit the standard explanations. The windows aren't just large for light, they're positioned at specific angles that track solar movement through the day. The ceiling heights aren't just impressive. They create air circulation patterns that maintain constant fresh airflow. The acoustic properties aren't accidental. They're engineered to produce specific frequency environments. These weren't buildings designed for beauty that happened to house hospitals. They were healing machines disguised as architecture. The relationship between architecture and health was understood by ancient traditions worldwide. Temples positioned to capture specific solar alignments. Sacred spaces engineered to produce resonant frequencies. Healing chambers designed around principles of geometry, light, and sound. Modern medicine dismisses these traditions as superstition. We've reduced health to chemistry and mechanics. Bodies are machines. Diseases are malfunctions. Treatments are physical interventions that repair or replace damaged components. But this reductionist approach has limits, obvious limits. Limits we encounter every day in conditions that resist chemical and mechanical treatment. What if health involves more than chemistry and mechanics? What if the ancient traditions preserved knowledge that modern medicine has abandoned? What if the Tartarian hospitals encoded that knowledge into their very structure? The evidence suggests exactly this. Consider the sanitariums that proliferated in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These weren't hospitals in the modern sense. They were residential treatment facilities where patients lived for weeks, months, or years. Their treatments focused not on drugs or surgery but on environment, rest, diet, and exposure to natural elements. The sanitariums were built in specific locations: mountains, seashores, forests, places with particular air quality, particular light exposure, particular energetic characteristics. Their architecture featured massive covered porches where patients spent hours daily exposed to fresh air and sunlight. Their designs incorporated sophisticated environmental controls that maintained specific conditions regardless of weather. And they worked. Tuberculosis, the great killer of the era, responded to sanitarium treatment when no effective drugs existed. Patients recovered from conditions that should have killed them. The cure rates were remarkable given the absence of pharmaceutical intervention. Modern medicine attributes sanitarium success to rest and nutrition. Debilitated patients simply needed time to recover, and sanitariums provided that time. But this explanation ignores the specificity of sanitarium design. If rest and nutrition were sufficient, any comfortable environment would work equally well. Yet sanitariums were built to precise specifications. Their locations were chosen carefully. Their architecture followed consistent principles. Something about the specific environmental conditions created healing effects, something that modern medicine has never explained, because it falls outside the chemical-mechanical model of health. The Tartarian medical system, as I've reconstructed it from fragmentary evidence, operated on fundamentally different principles. Modern medicine treats the body as separate from its environment. We isolate patients in controlled settings. We administer treatments that work regardless of surroundings. We believe health depends on internal biochemistry, not external conditions. Tartarian medicine understood health as a relationship between body and environment. Healing required creating specific environmental conditions that supported the body's natural recovery processes. The environment wasn't background, it was treatment. This explains the hospital architecture. The precise window angles weren't decorative. They ensured patients received specific light frequencies at specific times. The ceiling heights weren't impressive vanity. They created air circulation that maintained optimal oxygen and humidity. The acoustic engineering wasn't accidental. It produced sound environments that supported cellular regeneration. The buildings were treatment protocols encoded in stone and glass. The role of light in Tartarian medicine deserves particular attention. Modern medicine uses light therapeutically in limited ways. Light therapy for seasonal depression, phototherapy for certain skin conditions, laser treatments for specific medical procedures. But these applications barely scratch the surface of light's therapeutic potential. Different frequencies of light have different biological effects. Red light penetrates tissue and stimulates cellular energy production. Blue light affects circadian rhythms and bacterial activity. Ultraviolet light triggers vitamin D synthesis and kills pathogens. Infrared light promotes healing and reduces inflammation. The Tartarian hospitals were designed to deliver specific light frequencies to patients. The massive windows weren't just for illumination. They were engineered to filter and direct particular wavelengths. The interior surfaces were designed to reflect and diffuse light in ways that created therapeutic environments. Colored glass appeared in many of these hospitals. We interpret this as decorative, stained glass, adding beauty to institutional settings. But colored glass is a light filter. Red glass transmits red frequencies. Blue glass transmits blue frequencies. The colors weren't aesthetic choices. They were medical prescriptions. Patients in red glass rooms received red light therapy. Patients in blue glass rooms received blue light therapy. The architecture itself delivered treatment tailored to specific conditions. The chromotherapy tradition preserves fragments of this knowledge. Chromotherapy, the use of color and light for healing, is dismissed by modern medicine as pseudoscience. There's no mechanism, we're told, by which colored light could affect health. It's placebo at best, fraud at worst. But the dismissal ignores accumulating evidence. Studies show measurable biological effects from different light frequencies. The mechanisms are being identified at the cellular level. The ancient traditions are being validated by modern research. What if chromotherapy isn't emerging alternative medicine? What if it's recovering Tartarian medicine? What if practitioners working with colored light are accidentally rediscovering principles that were standard medical knowledge before the reset? The consistency between traditional chromotherapy protocols and the design of 19th century healing architecture supports this interpretation. The colors used in therapy match the colored glass found in historic hospitals. The conditions treated matched the conditions those hospitals specialized in. The knowledge wasn't lost, it was suppressed and fragmented, but the fragments remain, preserved in traditions that survived the erasure. Sound was equally important in Tartarian healing. Modern medicine barely acknowledges sound as therapeutically relevant. We know that loud noise causes stress and hearing damage. We understand that music can affect mood, but the idea that specific frequencies could treat disease seems absurd to contemporary medical thinking. Yet the evidence for sound-based healing is substantial. Ultrasound is already used medically. We just pretend it's different from other sound-based treatment because it involves frequencies above human hearing. The principle is the same. Sound waves affecting biological tissue. Infrasound, see frequencies below human hearing, has documented biological effects. It can cause discomfort, disorientation, and physiological changes. If sound can harm, it can heal. The principle is symmetrical. And audible frequencies, the sounds we actually hear, affect biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. Different frequencies influence brainwave patterns. Certain rhythms synchronize biological processes. Sound can shatter kidney stones, so clearly it affects physical matter. The Tartarian hospitals were acoustic environments. Their architecture created specific sound characteristics. The high ceilings, the domed spaces, the particular geometries all shaped how sound behaved within the buildings. Patients in these spaces weren't just resting in quiet environments. They were immersed in frequency baths. The buildings themselves generated or sustained therapeutic sounds that supported healing processes. The cathedral-like quality of many 19th-century hospitals makes sense in this context. We've interpreted their grandeur as civic pride or religious influence on institutional design. Hospitals built to inspire awe and comfort the dying. But cathedrals weren't just impressive spaces. They were acoustic instruments. Their design created specific sound environments through reflection, resonance, and reverberation. The architecture shaped sound as deliberately as it shaped space. If hospitals were built on cathedral principles, they weren't borrowing aesthetic inspiration, they were borrowing acoustic technology, creating sound environments that supported healing the way cathedral acoustics supported worship. The pipe organs found in many large hospitals reinforce this interpretation. We assume they provided entertainment or religious comfort for patients, but pipe organs are precision frequency generators. They produce specific tones with specific characteristics. In an acoustically designed space, they could create therapeutic sound fields throughout the building. The organ wasn't entertainment, it was medical equipment. Water featured prominently in Tartarian medical facilities. The elaborate fountains in hospital gardens weren't merely decorative. The bathhouses associated with treatment centers weren't just for hygiene. The sophisticated plumbing systems in healing facilities weren't simply modern convenience. Water was medicine. Hydrotherapy, treatment through water application, has a long history that peaked in the 19th century. Patients were immersed in baths of specific temperatures. They received water treatments through showers, wraps, and compresses. They drank mineral waters from specific sources. Modern medicine has largely abandoned hydrotherapy, retaining only fragments like physical therapy pools and ice application for injuries. We've reduced water to a mechanical substance, useful for cleaning and hydrating but not inherently therapeutic. But water has properties we don't fully understand. Its molecular structure responds to environmental conditions in ways that physics struggles to explain. Its behavior in biological systems exceeds what chemistry predicts. The Tartarians may have understood water's therapeutic properties at a level we've lost. The elaborate water features in their medical facilities weren't decorative or hygienic. They were treatment delivery systems, water prepared and applied in specific ways to produce healing effects. The mineral springs that attracted 19th century health seekers weren't valuable just for their dissolved minerals. The water itself, structured by its passage through specific geological formations, carried therapeutic properties that chemical analysis couldn't capture. Electrotherapy was far more prevalent in 19th century medicine than modern histories acknowledge. Before the pharmaceutical era, electrical treatment was mainstream medicine. Patients received electrical stimulation for conditions ranging from paralysis to depression. Devices generating various electrical frequencies were standard medical equipment. Practitioners specialized in electrical therapeutics. Then, around the turn of the 20th century, electrotherapy largely vanished from legitimate medicine. It was relegated to quackery associated with fraudulent devices and desperate patients. Pharmaceutical approaches became dominant and electrical treatment became suspect. The standard explanation credits scientific progress. Electrical devices didn't work. Proper research revealed their ineffectiveness. Medicine advanced beyond primitive electrical theories. But this explanation doesn't match the historical record. Electrotherapy had substantial documented success. Practitioners reported consistent results. Patients improved under electrical treatment. What if electrotherapy was suppressed rather than disproven? What if it worked too well, threatened emerging pharmaceutical interests, and had to be eliminated? The Tartarian energy systems we've documented in previous investigations involved sophisticated electrical technology. If the Tartarians understood atmospheric electricity and free energy, they certainly understood bioelectricity. The body is an electrical system. Treating it electrically makes perfect sense. Modern medicine is slowly rediscovering electrotherapy, transcranial stimulation for depression, electrical stimulation for wound healing, bioelectric approaches to regeneration. Each rediscovery is presented as cutting-edge innovation. But we're not innovating, we're recovering, returning to therapeutic approaches that were standard before the reset and were systematically suppressed afterward. The architectural features of Tartarian medical facilities supported electrical therapeutics. The metal domes and spires we've identified as atmospheric energy collectors appeared on hospitals as well as other buildings. We've assumed their function was providing power for lighting or heating. But what if they served medical purposes? What if the electrical energy collected from the atmosphere was used directly for treatment? Patients in beds positioned beneath collection systems would receive constant low-level electrical exposure. The building itself would function as a treatment device, providing therapeutic electricity without wired devices or practitioner intervention. This would explain the specific geometries found in hospital architecture, the domed patient wards, the metal frameworks integrated into building design, the grounding systems that connected structures to earth. The buildings weren't just housing patients. They were treating them. Architecture as continuous therapy. The concept of healing environments has resurged in modern alternative medicine. Practitioners create treatment spaces with specific lighting, sound, and electromagnetic characteristics. They position patients in relation to windows, use colored filters, play therapeutic frequencies, and attend to environmental factors that conventional medicine ignores. These practitioners are typically dismissed as operating outside scientific medicine. Their methods lack controlled studies. Their mechanisms aren't established. Their success is attributed to placebo effects. But their methods mirror the design principles of 19th-century healing facilities. The attention to light matches the massive windows and colored glass. The sound considerations match the acoustic engineering. The electromagnetic awareness matches the electrical infrastructure. What if these alternative practitioners are intuitively recovering Tartarian medical principles? What if their methods work not because of placebo, but because they're accidentally recreating conditions that genuinely support healing? The pharmaceutical takeover of medicine coincided precisely with the suppression of Tartarian knowledge. Before 1900, medicine was diverse. Botanical treatments, physical therapies, environmental approaches, and electrical methods competed alongside the emerging pharmaceutical industry. No single approach dominated. After 1900, pharmaceuticals became synonymous with legitimate medicine. Other approaches were marginalized, ridiculed, or outlawed. The diverse medical marketplace collapsed into pharmaceutical monopoly. The Flexner Report of 1910 is usually credited with this transformation. Abraham Flexner surveyed medical schools for the Carnegie Foundation and recommended standardizing medical education around pharmaceutical and surgical approaches. Schools teaching other methods lost funding and accreditation. Within decades, alternative approaches had been largely eliminated from legitimate medicine. We're told this represented progress, scientific medicine replacing primitive alternatives, evidence-based treatment defeating superstition and fraud. But the timing is suspicious. The Flexner Report appeared during the period when Tartarian knowledge was being systematically suppressed across all fields. It specifically targeted approaches that aligned with Tartarian medical principles. Environmental medicine eliminated. Electrotherapy eliminated. Botanical approaches marginalized. The diverse methods that might have preserved Tartarian healing knowledge all pushed to the margins or destroyed. What remained was pharmaceutical medicine, treatment based on patented chemical compounds, medicine that could be controlled, commodified, and profited from, medicine that ensured patients remained dependent on ongoing treatment rather than being cured. Consider what we've lost. The Tartarian medical system apparently cured conditions that we manage indefinitely. Cancer appears throughout historical records, but so do recoveries that modern oncology cannot explain. Patients with documented malignancies who recovered through environmental treatment, electrical therapy, or methods that don't fit pharmaceutical models. Degenerative neurological conditions, diseases we consider hopeless, show similar patterns. Historical recoveries that shouldn't have happened given what we know about disease progression. Autoimmune disorders, infections, chronic conditions of every type. The historical record contains recoveries that modern medicine cannot replicate and therefore dismisses as misdiagnosis or spontaneous remission. What if these weren't anomalies? What if they were the expected outcomes of treatment approaches we no longer practice? The architectural evidence extends to specialized treatment facilities. Facilities for treating specific conditions featured specific design elements. Buildings for respiratory patients had particular ventilation characteristics. Facilities for neurological conditions incorporated specific acoustic properties. So treatment centers for different diseases followed different architectural principles. This specialization makes no sense if the buildings were merely housing patients. Why would respiratory hospitals need different acoustics than neurological hospitals? Why would the architecture vary by condition treated? The specialization makes perfect sense if the buildings were treatment devices. Different conditions required different frequencies, different light, different environmental characteristics. The architecture delivered the appropriate treatment. The sanitariums for tuberculosis were built in mountains because altitude and atmospheric conditions affected treatment. The facilities for neurological conditions were built with specific acoustic properties because sound frequencies affected neural function. The design matched the disease because the design was the treatment. Fragments of Tartarian medical knowledge survive in traditional healing systems worldwide. Ayurvedic medicine in India incorporates environmental factors, specific frequencies, and energetic principles that parallel what the evidence suggests about Tartarian approaches. Traditional Chinese medicine works with concepts of energy flow that align with Tartarian understanding. Indigenous healing traditions across cultures emphasize environmental and energetic factors that modern medicine rejects. We're taught that these traditions are primitive precursors to scientific medicine, that they contain some useful observations mixed with superstition and error, that they might provide leads for pharmaceutical development but aren't valid medical systems themselves. But what if these traditions aren't primitive? What if they're preserving knowledge that was once universal? What if the Tartarian medical system wasn't unique but was the most sophisticated expression of principles understood by all advanced cultures? The suppression didn't target only Tartarian knowledge directly. It targeted all approaches that shared Tartarian principles. Traditional healing systems were dismissed as primitive. Environmental medicine was eliminated. Everything that contradicted pharmaceutical dominance was marginalized or destroyed. The survivors, the traditional systems that persisted in cultures less completely absorbed by the post-reset order, preserved fragments of what was lost. They're not primitive alternatives to modern medicine. They're remnants of a more advanced predecessor. The recovery of Tartarian medicine would transform how we approach disease. Instead of treating symptoms with chemicals, we might treat causes with environment. Instead of managing conditions indefinitely, we might cure them through targeted frequency exposure. Instead of fighting the body with drugs that cause side effects, we might support the body with conditions that enable natural healing. The diseases we consider incurable might prove quite curable once we understand what we've lost. Cancer might respond to specific frequency environments. Neurological degeneration might reverse under proper acoustic conditions. Autoimmune disorders might resolve when the body receives the energetic support it needs. This isn't fantasy. It's what the evidence suggests was normal before the reset. The Tartarians didn't struggle with diseases we can't cure. They had methods we've forgotten. They understood health in ways we've been taught to dismiss. And their knowledge isn't completely lost. It survives in architectural fragments, traditional practices, and the work of researchers who are rediscovering what was hidden. The hospitals built as healing machines still stand in many cities. Their therapeutic properties remain encoded in their design, even though we've forgotten how to use them. The light angles still work. The acoustic properties still function. The environmental characteristics still produce effects. Patients in these buildings, when they're still used as medical facilities, sometimes recover in ways that shouldn't happen. Doctors attribute this to placebo effects or unexplained factors. But the buildings are still doing what they were designed to do, still treating patients through architecture, still delivering therapy through environment. What would happen if we deliberately activated these properties? If we restored the colored glass that's been replaced with clear? If we reinstated the acoustic elements that have been removed or dampened? If we connected the electrical systems that have been disconnected and forgotten? The healing machines might work again. The cures might return. The diseases we consider hopeless might yield to treatment approaches we've been taught to ignore. The suppression of Tartarian medicine serves obvious interests. A medical system that cures patients is economically limited. Once cured, patients no longer purchase treatment. Revenue ends with recovery. A medical system that manages conditions perpetually is economically unlimited. Chronic patients purchase treatment indefinitely. Revenue continues until death. Pharmaceutical medicine is optimized for profit, not health. It maintains conditions rather than curing them. It creates dependencies rather than resolving them. It ensures ongoing revenue rather than completed treatment. The Tartarian approach threatened this model completely. Cures don't generate recurring revenue. Environmental treatment can't be patented and monopolized. Architecture-based therapy doesn't require pharmaceutical purchases. The suppression of Tartarian medicine wasn't just about hiding advanced knowledge. It was about protecting profit models that depend on ongoing disease. But the knowledge persists. In the researchers studying light therapy and discovering what the colored glass windows already knew, in the practitioners working with sound frequencies and finding effects that match the acoustic engineering of old hospitals, in the scientists investigating bioelectricity and rediscovering what electrotherapy practitioners understood a century ago, in the architects designing healing environments and accidentally recreating Tartarian principles. The recovery is happening, slowly, fragmentarily, against determined resistance, but happening. Each study that validates light therapy recovers a piece of what was lost. Each discovery about sound and health restores Tartarian understanding. Each breakthrough in bioelectric medicine returns knowledge that was suppressed. The Tartarian medical secrets aren't completely secret anymore. The cures for diseases we still can't treat may already exist, encoded in architectural remnants and traditional practices and research findings that haven't been connected to their historical origins. Cancer might yield to frequency approaches that Tartarian hospitals delivered through their design. Neurological conditions might respond to acoustic environments that cathedral-like medical buildings once provided. Autoimmune disorders might resolve through water treatments that 19th century hydrotherapy facilities perfected. The cures are there. The knowledge is there, hidden in plain sight, fragmented across disciplines, waiting to be reassembled. The Tartarians understood health in ways we've forgotten. They built healing into their architecture. They cured conditions we consider incurable. And recovering their knowledge might transform medicine more fundamentally than any pharmaceutical breakthrough ever could, because they weren't managing disease, they were ending it. And we could too, if we remember what was taken from us, if we recover what was suppressed, if we see the healing machines that still surround us and learn to use them again.